Welcome, explorers. Happy to be back.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah,
I'm doing great. I'm so excited about the podcast series and what we're doing with our Explorer fan base here.
Yeah.
In terms of teaching them about money and helping them pursue mastery, just like we are on the path.
Yep.
Today's episode is about financial milestones. This is part deux.
Part deux.
Yes. Part one was yesterday. It was all about sort of what are the basics that you need to know. And today, using the metaphor analogy from yesterday, if you are halfway up the mountain or farther, your plan needs to be a little bit different.
Yep. And just to expand that also, especially for someone like myself who isn't halfway there yet, still being able to engage in this conversation as a possibility in the future, in the very near future.
Yes.
So for you explorers out there, don't think that this is one you can sleep on. You got to pay attention.
Yeah, we had talked, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, about knowing your destination.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so we're going to leave you with a task at the end of this show, and that is going to be to imagine what your retirement life and what maybe a work optional life would look like. So before we get to that, we're going to talk about maybe some of the strategies that can help get you there. And I'll give this disclaimer. I think this is my personal belief, but I think that every single person needs their own formalized, personalized financial plan. Because so many of us are operating under different circumstances. There may be two people working, maybe there's one person working, maybe one has a pension, maybe one intends on writing a book or doing movies or creating some other sort of ongoing income stream later in life. So because of that, it's going to change the way that everyone operates.
Yep, 100%.
So, yeah.
Even down to, geography and where you live.
Right, exactly. Or where you want to live.
Where you want to live.
Maybe it's a tiny home with 2 corgis. I don't know. Maybe you're in Paris.
Oh, that's my example.
Do they have tiny home communities in Paris? Have you figured this out yet?
I'm sure they do in the south of France. I think it's a song or something. I hope so. If not, I'm going to create it. So
I'm going in June. I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to dive in, Adam, and really ask you. I would say that you represent the average American and also family. In financial milestone building, part 2, really looking at how we can employ money, have it work for us. And there's, like you said, it's very personal, but for you, what is it that you have done to really, employ your money?
Well, there are a few things that I've done that I think are somewhat outside the ordinary from what most people do. And when I say what most people do, I'm referring to putting all your money with an advisor who is then putting money in mutual funds and stocks and bonds and other investments. I do have an advisor. Money goes to that advisor on a regular basis, and they are investing it the way that they see fit and have, basically crafted a future me, what my life looks like down the road. On top of that, that was always important to me, was to have some amount of money that's going towards investments and knowing that that's kind of the call it security for the future. But at the same time, Nick, one of the things that I thought about was I'm a self-employed business owner. I don't have the luxury of a pension plan coming to me at some point. My wife works for a university and they have a generous match to a 403B program. So she's involved in that. But in the midst of it, we were also thinking about, well, how could we minimize our expenses or maximize our income to make sure that we were well prepared for a life where work became optional? And I never really liked the idea of retirement, because retirement suggests there's a certain age and then you're probably golfing with your buddies or sitting around at home. And I don't think that's going to be the case at all with me and my family. So we started blasting away our mortgage. And we did that fairly early on, probably in our, just into our 30s, maybe our mid 30s. And we got to a point where we were blasting away our mortgage quite rapidly because we saw the value in paying that down and creating equity in the home. And then we did something a little bit different. And we took the equity that was in the home and we applied that to a whole cash value life insurance policy. So a whole life cash value policy that increases in value year over year, and you essentially overfund it for 3 or 4 years. And then once you get a significant amount in there, for us it was about $100,000. At that point it scales way back to basically what you would put into a Roth IRA every single year. The reason that I did that and wanted to do that was I believe that there is a difference for people who invest. If you had $500 a month and you were putting that in a dollar cost average investment, you know, that's one way to invest. And I think there are certain investments that are open to someone like that. And then there is another level of people who can put in $100,000 or more into an investment that other doors then open for you. So if you were investing in a money market, or a mutual fund, what would you say is an average return on something like that?
Anywhere between 4 to 9%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 to 9%, kind of the average return that most people would be like, oh yeah, I'd love to get 9%.
Yeah.
If you're putting in $500 a month in a dollar cost average investment. When you get into this financial milestone part 2, and particularly when you've secured an amount of money that you could invest in something, say $100,000, the doors start opening up of all the other opportunities that are there. We could buy a rental property for cash. We could invest in a real estate investment trust.
Yeah.
I've had people come out of the woodwork and say, do you want to be an early investor in this technology that I'm developing? Because they're looking for significant amounts of money. And when I asked them, well, what kind of return are we looking at? The numbers were always 15 to 25%. So I believe that for the average investor, you know, part 1, yesterday's program, super important. Get all those accounts, the Roth, the 401k, etc. Today's show, I think the goal should be to think a little bit differently about your investments and to start looking at other alternative investments that you could make, including maybe paying down your mortgage or creating a fund that allows you to invest in these kinds of opportunities.
Yeah.
What questions does that trigger for you?
Well, a lot. Well, first of all, I think it's really interesting because when I've listened to different podcasts and listened to different financial heads talk, and it is very generic and basic, and they're addressing the general population.
Right.
However, when it comes to people who are have gained a level of mastery or reached a certain level of financial freedom, milestones, the conversation then becomes very, very tailored. And so I guess my question to you would be, as someone who is still on the, the foothills, so I get that there's the financial milestones, which is part 2, but what certain things should I be hitting, whether it's a certain dollar amount in my bank account before I start thinking about larger investments?
Yeah.
That's
a great question. And I go back to what I said originally about everyone's plan should be so personalized. I read a book, my wife and I read this book when we first got married. It was called Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach. And in the book, David Bach said men and women have different risk tolerances. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes.
Yeah. So mine is very high, my wife's is very low. And David Bach in the book said, identify what is the number that you need in savings at any given point in time to feel safe and secure all the time. And so, keep in mind, I was younger than you are at this point when I asked my wife this question. And without skipping a beat, she said $20,000. And I thought she'd hit the Listerine too hard that morning because I was like, what are you talking about? We still had $40,000 to pay off in student loan debt and other debt. And so in answer to your question, it's a very personal answer.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you are comfortable with. But one of my advisors once told me, he was asking me what kind of advice I give to college students, particularly around when they ask, what should I be investing my money in?
Yeah.
And he said, one of the things that I think they should be taught is that everyone should be able to save $5,000 in an account just to prove to themselves they can. And then once they do that, they should be able to save $10,000 in an account just to prove that they can.
Yeah.
And it does two things, in my opinion. Number one, it does prove that you can do it, that you're able to do it. Number two, it creates this amount of money that opens up quite a few possibilities. So if you want to buy a duplex or a rental property, you could do that with $10,000 down and start that process. If you wanted to open a business, $10,000 might allow you to start a business of some kind, even if it's a side hustle, which we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode. So I think number one, it's setting aside some amount of money that makes you feel safe and secure.
Gotcha.
On the house side and the HELOC and doing the structure that we do, I think it does require that someone be a homeowner to do it. But that's subjective to where you live or where you want to live and how viable that is to buy real estate.
Yeah, and I appreciate that answer because I think one of the intentions of many of this podcast and of this YouTube series is to leave explorers with more questions than answers and making sure that we're asking the right questions, because as you share, it is really personal around what level I should hit. I am then asking myself, okay, well, what is my risk tolerance? How comfortable am I with risk? Do I need 5,000 or 7,000 or 3,000 to feel comfortable making a larger investment? So I'm in the inquiry of that. I'll definitely have to let you know where I end up and come to.
That's an interesting question too. What is the number that you would feel most safe and secure with? And I will tell you this: if you are with someone who you intend to be with forever, your number and their number will be vastly different, right? Because someone's going to say, like my wife, I need 20,000. Well, I probably would have been comfortable with 3 or 5.
Yeah.
So, we attempted to meet in the middle at one point, and then she went out. She's like, no, I really need this amount of money to feel safe and secure. So I think it is different for everyone, but I agree with Nick. Our goal here is to leave you with more questions. In the pursuit of mastery, it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I'm going to go learn about that. And know that what we talk about here, whether it's the HELOC process or it's a cash value life insurance policy, we'll talk about these things in future episodes so you understand a little bit more about what we're talking about as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Cool.
Good stuff.
So we got to leave them with a to-do.
So the to-do and the challenge we'd like to invite you into is really starting to discover and explore what does retirement or a work optional life actually look like for you. And to provide a little context, and we'll dive deeper into it, like Adam was mentioning, retirement can have a connotation with a particular age. But say, I gave you $10 million, could you retire tomorrow? Even though you aren't that quote unquote retirement age at 65, I know I could with $10 million.
I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So really creating what does retirement look like for you? Is it a particular number in a bank account? Is it an age? If you are going to be working, for the rest of your life because you're just that passionate about it, what does that life actually look like? Very similar, tying back into episode 5, really creating that destination. Because once we know that, then we can apply all of these advanced skills and investment opportunities and different structures to fulfill that life.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that's your task. Come up with what does retirement or work optional life look like to you. Once you know that destination, a lot of what we're talking about is going to come into clear focus for you to build that life that you ultimately want. So until then, tomorrow is we have a special podcast tomorrow. You'll have to see what it is tomorrow. But we're excited to see you there. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, comment, and we'll see you tomorrow.